Welcome to this week's Desk Side Chat. Really excited to have a special guest with us this week, Jeff Johnston. Jeff, really appreciate you joining us.
I'm excited. You and I have talked on these topics many times, and I'm always excited to share some of the insight and some of the things I've learned over 32-year career in this industry.
And you've certainly had a successful career, Jeff. $700 million under management, multiple advisors in your office, really have run a very successful practice. And you're currently in this transition period as you're really taking on this Living Undeterred project. The topic for this week is something you and I have discussed a number of times. It's the value of conscious delegation. So if you can just maybe provide a little bit of a additional background on kind of what is motivating, what's driving you right now, and then we'll get into the topic.
Yeah, today's topic is delegation, conscious delegation, I like to call it, where you're hyper aware of who you're giving tasks to and probably the why behind it. But my background is at 23, I came into the insurance business primarily, sold the life insurance door to door, did that for a long time, hated it. They used to say that, 6 days a week, you thought about quitting the business. And after a couple of years, it goes to 5 days a week. And after about 5 years, it goes to 4 days a week. And, you get to the point where it's like, I'm so far into this. It's like the sunk cost fallacy. It's like, I'm so far into it, I can't get out of it now. And that's kind of really how my career started. I was not, I would say successful early on, but I will say I learned something that as I got older and things happened in my life, I am so grateful I became a very good delegator, because it really allowed me an opportunity to sit back, look at what my priorities were, and not have to worry about answering emails and answering the phone call and marketing and, doing all this stuff that a lot of advisors end up getting stuck doing. So delegation started off as a way for me to realize, how much I really didn't know about a lot of things. The beauty of delegation isn't what you know, it's admitting what you don't know. That's the real beauty of delegation, and weaponizing that as a superpower, that you can say, there's people on my team that are substantially better at things than I am. I'm at. I may enjoy doing it, but I'm not good at it. And then empowering those people to make those decisions. So I did that for a long time. We basically built our practice up. And then in 2014, we made a pivot where we decided to get out of transactional commission-based, and we made the wholesale jump into AUM fee-based. So we're at 700 million right now, even with the little pullback in the market. And we're about 92% reoccurring revenue right now. Put it in context, I think in 2015, we were at like 47%, maybe 40% reoccurring. It was in the mid to low 40s. So in, 7 years, we pretty much converted a whole book to reoccurring. Now, obviously with COVID and all the other stuff that came up, we count our blessings each day that we don't have to go out and move money around or come up with creative ways to roll over our 401ks. We were creating enough revenue to do well without having to do anything, which is that flywheel concept that you learn in James Collins' book, Good to Great. Just touch it and everything goes. And that's, again, delegation, conscious delegating, all goes hand in hand. But what really happened that changed my life was in 2016, at the age of 50, when I pretty much thought I had it all, happily married, 3 boys, coaching, everything you could do as a dad or as a parent. And then I get that call that, every parent dreads, that our oldest son, Seth, was found dead in a hotel room, poisoned by fentanyl at the age of 23. And that moment, I made a conscious decision to become a better man, not a bitter man, as I like to say. And so that event transformed me into a person of tremendous gratitude, empathy, love, caring. Almost feel fortunate that this happened to me in a way, because it made me a better person. Obviously, I'm not fortunate from many regards, but I certainly could have let this define me in a negative way. And then in June of last year, my wife of 21 years died from alcoholism, from the grief and trauma of losing our child. So I went from age 50 on top of the world, no debt, happy, healthy, to now at 55, widowed with with one of my 3 children not here. So my living undeterred project came from this. And so out of chaos and trauma and grief and horrendous moments, something beautiful has emerged. And, to be involved in spawning this movement of living undeterred, teaching people that, life isn't fair and it is very hard. And however, it is beautiful. It is awesome. The fact that I'm in awe every day of meeting new people and sharing stories and being vulnerable as a man makes me a stronger person. It makes me a better son, makes me a better neighbor, a better dad. So yeah, that's where I'm at, John. That's my life. I love the business. I'm not retired officially from Premier. I'm still the OSJ, but I have an OSJ delegate who does most of my work for me. So today I thought we could spend some time talking about how I built the company up, what delegation has meant to me, and then really how delegation saved my life, because I took a year off. I literally didn't go in the office for a year, and our AUM went up, our revenue went up, nobody quit, we didn't lose any clients, and then COVID hit, a couple years after that. And the fact that we had a stable foundation that did not need Jeff Johnston, I think made Premier Investments of Iowa more valuable. And that's something I talk about owners, is that if your company's your name only and it's only dependent on you, what happens if you're not around for whatever reason? How are your clients taken care of? What's your transition? What's your succession plan? Those are all things that people have to think of. So,
yeah, you and I,
yeah, we could go forever on these
we can go
topics.
forever on so many different ways, but just since you brought that up, because that's something that is really pushing me in this entire endeavor that I'm on, Good Advisors Finish First, is that so many advisors I've worked with over the years of conversations and say, what's your plan if you get hit by a bus? Just like you're saying, your name's on the door, your business is 100% you, something happens. And I'll have advisors say, well, I got to buy, sell, I got all these things in place. And then the question is that I come back with is, well, what if you get hit by a bus and you don't die? What happens then? What do you have
Yeah.
structured in your business to make sure that it can continue with you either loosely tied or maybe not even tied into it? And I keep saying this all the time, that good advisors finish first, nice guys finish last. If your entire value proposition is that you're nothing more than a nice guy and that's it, that's just not going to cut it. Long term, you have to have a structure, you have to have a process, you have to have something in place that's going to take care of your clients over the long term. So I want to go back, Jeff, to the beginning, because we've talked about this before. As you got into this business, as you started out, I guess at what point did you have that epiphany moment where you realized because everybody's running right out of the gate, you're going knocking on doors, you're trying to sell, you're owning everything. At what point did you have that epiphany moment to say, I can't do everything, I need to start delegating? And how did that all come about? Second year?
It was my second year. So I was 23, I started in the business, and that's a whole nother hour I could tell you about that, which I won't, but 23 started in the business. I think I made $15,800 my first 12 months in the business at 23. And this would have been in 89. And then the next year I went to the agency's year-end banquet or whatever. And the individual who won the agent of the year was talking about how he hires people and how he delegates. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I kind of like that. I'm working 100 hours a week and made $15,000, but I didn't have a plan B. So plan B was just sell more insurance. Plan C was sell more than plan B. And that was kind of how my mind worked. I didn't have any other backup plan. And so I went out that next year and hired a full-time assistant at $22,000 a year. Coming out of a year, I made $15,000.
I love that part of the story, paying more than what you made.
Yeah. And I figured, well, okay, I can work 100 hours a week. She'll work 40. Now I'm working 140 hours a week. That was my mindset. If I hired somebody else, now I'm working 180 hours a week. If I find somebody else, I'm working 220 hours a week. So you can't create time, but you can buy time by hiring very good, effective people. So that was my mindset, John, as this 24, 25-year-old broke as a joke, no backup plan advisor, that all I had at the time was my insurance license. I didn't have any securities. I didn't get my securities license for till year 4 or 5. So I just decided I was going to sell annuities and life insurance, and I was very aggressive at it. every way along the way that we did something that was successful, we were told many times not to do it by many people. I got into the teacher market very early doing workshops, was told by people, teachers don't have money. They look at their salaries, Jeff, they make $25,000, $30,000 a year. I said, yeah, but a lot of them have 200, 300, 400,000 in their TSAs, their 403Bs. I'm not going after their income to invest. I'm going after their money they already have set aside. So a lot of these school districts had these old insurance agents that sold these 403Bs and then just never did anything. Well, they just stayed on autopilot for 30 years. So I'd meet these retirees that had tons of money in 403Bs getting zero service. So we would just do workshops in high schools and we would roll this money over, and then we'd meet the husbands and they had 401ks and we do financial plans. And that's kind of how everything started. But again, it was coming into something that everyone said, don't do. Don't hire assistant until you make more money. Don't work with teachers because they don't have any money. And so I've sort of realized in everything that people tell me not to do, that's where I'm doing very well at. And so my whole life has pretty much been designed on waiting for people to tell me something not to do. And then I figure out that that's the reason why I need to do it. And it's worked well for me. I've made many, many, many mistakes, plenty bad decisions we made as a company on projects that didn't pan out. But again, living undeterred, even though that's kind of my mantra now with things I do out of the business, that's really something that applied when I was actively working. And so I kept adding staff. I mean, we'd add another one, add another one, add another one. And then pretty soon I looked over and I'm like, wow, I got 4 full-time staff. I got 3 advisors. We really grew organically. I didn't buy a book of business till we bought Gary's out, which would have been about 4 years ago. That was the first book of business that I really bought. And that was like $100 and something million book. So that's part of our 700 AUM came from acquisition, but most of it was slow, methodical, organic growth. And, you know, delegation, one thing I wanted to talk about is some nuggets people can chew on, but 2 things that came to mind. Early in my career, I listened to a presentation by an old insurance legend, Sid Friedman, I think. He's since deceased. You know, you looked exactly like your epitome of a car salesman, slick back hair, you know, just look, you know, golden tongue. You probably know who he is.
Yep.
I saw him speak one time and I bought his tapes and stuff. And he had this thing with the 3 Ds, he call it, you know, because I can tell if somebody's delegated by looking at their desk. So I could walk into your office right now, open up your office and look at your desk. I could tell right now if you're a control freak or if you're really good at delegating. And if your desk is fairly clean, you're pretty good at delegating. If it's not, if you have stacks of yellow pads of paper and files and sticky notes everywhere, you probably aren't really as effective in delegating as you can be. I'm not saying you're a bad delegator. I'm just saying you could be better. And so Sid Friedman
we all
had
could
these
be
3,
better, right? There's
he had
nothing wrong
these,
with
well,
that.
you can be better at anything.
Yeah.
I can be better at everything I do. But Sid had these 3 things, the 3 Ds. Every piece of paper you touch. See, I take a piece of paper, I look at it, and probably I set it over here. Tomorrow I come in, I take it, and I set it over here. And it kind of gets just moved around. And it's like, so Sid had these 3 things: delegate, do, or destroy. Those 3 things, every single piece of paper. Now, today it's morphed into emails, texting, comments on LinkedIn, Facebook. You know, later is like the kiss of death. It's like the worst word in the English vocabulary. And I tell my boys that too. Later doesn't exist. Don't ever tell me later. It's got to be right now. Now, a big problem with that, like with me and a lot of successful advisors, is they have attention deficit. I'm full-blown attention deficit. You notice I don't use the last D because I think it's criminal to call it a disorder. We need to stop telling our kids ADD is a disorder. So I don't allow anybody to use the last D around me. Attention deficit is a great gift you have. It's not a curse. It's not a disorder. Trust me. You want to believe it's a disorder, then it will become one. But so delegate, destroy, and do. So every time I touch something, I have it in my hand. I say, okay, I'm not putting this back down. I'm going to do it, delegate it, destroy. Now, the problem with that is the 4th D is distractions. That's my Achilles heel, John, is I get distracted. So what I've been doing lately when I'm working on my tour, like right now I'm working on, here's the states that we're going. We have the tour broken up into 3 different tours, East, West, and South, is I have to shut off my computer, my links. So Facebook, LinkedIn, I exit out of them. I just get off whatever you call them. And it allows me then to not get, and I shut my phone off too. So that way I don't get distracted. Now, again, with attention deficit, it's easy to get distracted. Now, you may wonder, well, what's so bad about distraction? I was listening to a podcast by Johan Hari, who's a leader in the addiction arena. And he was saying that the average employee in the United States, this is crazy if anyone listening here has employees, or if you're an employee, the average employee in the United States has a maximum attention span at work of 3 minutes. And he said that, you look at an athlete, a basketball player, and they get into a zone, right? A golfer, birdie, 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 eagle, and you just like, don't do anything because they're in the zone. Well, in the workplace, we call that the flow, getting in the flow. So you have an employee who's working on a task for you, or maybe you're working on something or whatever. The average employee stays in flow 3 minutes at a time. And you may say, well, why don't they stay? Well, they get distracted. The boss comes down the hall, opens the door. Hey, you busy? What are they going to say? Yeah? No, they're going to say no. Well, can you do this? Boom. Now they're distracted. It takes on average 23 minutes for an employee to get back into flow on one task. So you imagine you're a boss and you're harassing your best people every day with tasks that, now granted, Jeff, wait a minute, you're being a hypocrite. You said I should delegate. Well, you're probably understaffed in. If you're delegating to the one person the whole time and you're distracting them out of their flow, you probably need to hire another person then. Start balancing out the delegation so you're not putting it all in one person's lap. But you want to make your employees more effective. Stop interrupting them. I mean, if you want to create efficiencies in your practice, stop interrupting people. And I have to shut things off or I'll get interrupted. So do, delegate, destroy. But then the fourth D to mind comes to me would be the antagonist, the antithesis, I guess, would be distractions, But if you think about that another interesting thing that I heard on this podcast from Johan Hari, he's got some great books on addiction. He said for 45,000 years, human beings have been consciously good at doing two things at once. That hasn't changed, hasn't got better, hasn't got worse. So if I'm talking to you right now, I could probably look down, I could write a note on something and talk to you, but I couldn't go to my phone and text my dad at the same time. Yet the average adolescent today thinks they can do 5 to 7 things simultaneously, and the average adult thinks they can do 4 to 5 things simultaneously. So who are we kidding? As a society, you wonder why we're stressed and anxious and not getting things done. A lot of it's just our inability to be aware of the task at hand that we're working on, to have not be distracted. My son was back from college and his girlfriend was here. They were watching a movie. She had her laptop, her iPad, and her phone at the same time. And then I was trying to talk to her about something too. Now, we're laughing, but there's a lot of adults listening right now that do the same damn thing. Mm-hmm. Do the same damn thing. Right now, they're on their phone listening to me because they just can't focus. It's either my conversation isn't interesting enough, or it was, and then they lost interest in a beep, and then now they're looking. So I just see this as a really big issue, and one of the reasons why delegation is even more important. And again, I got so many things I can talk about this, John. This is just amazing. But
I mean, go ahead. I'll let you.
Well, you don't delegate to necessarily. There's many reasons why you delegate. That's one thing you have to ask yourself. Why would I delegate this task? And I think what people do is they think, well, if I delegate, I'll free up time. I'll play the BS card right now. You're just going to replace it with another task. You're not going to free up time. That's a myth. That's an illusion. Only the best people that are good at meditation and focus and all these things that can actually get time freed up actually use it in a productive manner. Most people just take another task and replace it, and your anxiety level doesn't change. It just, it just stays the same or goes to some other task. So the beauty of delegation is it should free up time that you can actually do things that you want to do. Coach your kids' football team or hockey. Take your wife out for dinner. Call up your dad. Talk to him on the phone about the football game for half an hour. All these things that would increase your well-being in your life is where you should take your free time and spend it, and not just fill it up with another marketing tool or another whatever. I don't know. Again, I'm no expert in these areas. I just say with the life events I've had, losing my son and my wife, I've been very grateful in my time, and it's very valuable when I free up something. I don't waste it on something. I don't watch any news. I get all my information in little nuggets. I haven't had my TV on the news in years in my house. Toxic relationships, toxic ideas, toxic people, I have run like the plague.
So,
And it's just trying to get myself in a good mental state so I can really be appreciative and aware of how great my life is.
so talk for a moment, Jeff. We've gone into this before about staffing and how you
Yeah.
find the right people in our business. A lot of people are control freaks or, really want to own things, want to make sure that no mistakes are made. And in a lot of cases can be uncomfortable passing a task on. So how do you find those people that you can trust? How do you get that your mind around that ability to say, I'm going to let them make a mistake potentially?
Couldn't say any better. You ain't going to do it by not doing it. So if you're sitting around waiting for the right person to come to you, it's not going to happen. James Collins in Good to Great, you said you find great human beings and you make up a job position for them and you hire them on the spot. We don't hire people to fill positions. I just find great humans and I hire them to work for me. And that's how I'm going to build Living Undeterred up as a business. That's my objective after the tour is over, is to put together the best minds in the mental health, substance abuse, and addiction world, and find ways to build an organization up from the bottom level, from just an idea. Same way I built Premier Investments up. Just found really good people that I thought are honest, ethical, hardworking, passionate people that weren't. You don't want clock punchers. You want dreamers. You want people that at 4:01 aren't packing up to get out of the office. Those people don't last long in our culture. At least in my culture, they don't. I've not looked at the hours of any employee in a decade, how many hours they work. As long as they get what they need to get done and they take care of their families and they prioritize well, then it all works out. And people that don't fit that don't stay with us long, but we don't have a lot of turnover. I mean, I haven't had a employee lost in years. We have 7. So, and I'm not saying I'm great. I'm far from it, but I certainly know my weaknesses, which are more than my strengths, hands down. And then I just find people that are really good at taking care of my weaknesses. Like, one of mine is technology. I'm freaking terrible at it. I'm horrible at it. I'm 55 years old. I really don't want to learn all this stuff. I want to know enough to be dangerous, but I don't have any desire to learn a lot of this stuff. I'd rather be having human conversations with people than trying to learn how to, set up things. But I have to know enough to be dangerous to run a podcast and things like that. But back to another nugget that I like to talk about, my thoughts on knowledge, desire, and time. That goes in conjunction with Sid Freeman's The 3 Ds. Knowledge, desire, and time, I actually heard from Rick Edelman, who's probably, to me, on the Mount Rushmore of our industry when it comes to, marketing, visionary, just a thought leader in our industry, in the financial services industry. Rick Edelman is just
running a scaled business, right? I mean, scaling.
Yeah, I don't know how many billions he has. Once you get into past 7 or 8 billion, it doesn't matter. I guess maybe after $1 billion, it doesn't matter. But Rick, I heard him speak in Chicago about 7 years ago, and he said knowledge, desire, and time. And I thought, well, that's beautiful. That's even better than the 3 Ds. So what he means by knowledge, desire, and time is this. And we used to say this at seminars. If people, I'm making a presentation about investing, right? Well, one question I asked to people there is, well, how do you know you even need to hire a financial advisor? How do you know? Okay. It's not that you just can't understand your 401k, or you don't know what dollar cost averaging is, or you don't know how taxes work. That's not the reason why you hire a financial advisor. You're hiring a financial advisor to delegate the knowledge, the desire, or the time of your financial life. Example, you've heard this story, John. So I used to mow my yard on my riding lawnmower. It took like 2 hours. I had 3 boys and a wife and a business, and I really didn't enjoy mowing my yard for 2 hours. It took a lot of time. I knew I had the knowledge. I didn't have the desire, and I didn't want to do the time. So one day I was mowing my yard, and I noticed that there was a mowing company guy, the white trucks that back in and they mow. And I thought, well, this is great because I don't want to do this anymore. So I walked over across the street and I said, how much does it cost to mow? And he told me like $50 or something. And I said, okay, here's the deal. You can take my riding lawnmower. You can take my weed eater. You can take my gat. You can take everything I have. And I said, give me like 10 free mows and you can have it all. So he backed up and took all my crap. And I've never mowed my yard since. And it's $50 freaking a pop. Now, why the hell wouldn't everyone do that? You know, and you may say, well, I don't have $50. Well, you got 2 hours that you're taking to mow your yard, plus the main maintenance on the machine, you know, and I just, for me, my life, it was better to pay someone $50. And I take that same philosophy into most things that I do. You know, I'm not really interested in do it yourself. I want the time. I want the time. And so the knowledge, desire, and time, when you're asking someone about investing, here's how you switch that from a lens of the consumer, is if you have the knowledge, desire, and time to manage your own money today and in the future, then you don't need me. That's it. I'm not going to sell you a widget you don't need. All right. I don't know how much simpler that can be. And what it does is it really disarms the prospect from pretty much any objection at that point. Then they're like, okay, well,
and it could also
maybe Jeff's
help
right.
you,
Maybe I don't have the desire.
It could also
but I got
help
the
you
knowledge and
go
time.
through, sorry, I was just gonna say, it could also help you weed through and find the clients that aren't going to be a fit for you. Sorry.
Right. So those are some nuggets on that. And then, you know, when I was looking at some other advantages of delegating, one, you talked about how do you find people? Well, you find people by throwing them in a situation with 4 or 5 other employees, and the cream will rise to the top. The natural leaders will surface, and you're empowering your team to organically figure out who's good at what task, instead of me saying, well, John, you're good at correspondence with clients, so I'm going to have you do that. And you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to do that. I'd rather work on marketing. That's what I want to do, social media. I don't want to do emails to clients and set up workshops with, I don't want to do that. And so part of good delegating is letting the group decide is where everyone's strengths are. And then you just put each person at their strength. So when we do our staff reviews with our staff, a lot of the times we'll start them with, what percentage of your day are you actually doing what you love to do? And if they say not much, well, then you need to look at it internally, doing something different. We'll find a different place to put you so you can be most effective and enjoy your work. What good is having somebody who's really good at what they do if they don't want to go to work and they're not passionate? They don't have the same, love affair you have in what you're doing. I mean, to me, it's just a wasted opportunity as an employer that you could try to find the people that are the best at what they do and put them in those chairs, and you may have to rearrange and shift them around. And, but it builds trust with your employees too, John. It empowers them to kind of self-regulate, and it builds trust, and it makes them accountable. It makes them accountable at the same time. So there's some really good advantages for delegation. And then, like I said, when I had my personal life event hit 5 years ago, delegation saved my life. The fact I didn't have to come into the office. I could just stay home and work on Jeff Johnston, work on my alcoholism, work on my book I was writing, work on my projects, work on me. There's a reason why in a plane that they tell you when you hit turbulence, to put the oxygen mask on your face first. Is you're no good to anybody if you're a wreck. And so for me, I had to step back from everything to get my mental health in the best place I could get it before I came back into the world as a dad, as a son, as a business owner. And the fact I didn't have to go to work for almost a year was an advantage that I had, but it was set up from years and years and years of trusting other people to take care of the ship. And if you have a hard time trusting people, you're just probably not going to be good at delegating. And that's your choice. I mean, who am I to tell you how to run your business? I'm just telling you how I ran mine. And I really don't have a lot of regrets in delegating. I probably have more regrets in times I didn't delegate enough.
Well, which goes to when you're trusting employees and they're trusting you, something you've also shared is that as you're taking a step out of the business, doing some other things, so you're still kind of going back and forth, but the advantages of demonstrating the trust you have in employees by not participating in the meeting, letting them run things on their own, knowing that you might even just get in the way at meetings. And you've talked about
you
that.
know me. There's no might. If I sat into any meeting at the office, it would be a disaster. But, and I say that kind of haphazardly, jokingly, but the reality is I stopped sitting in staff meetings a decade ago. I realized if I sat there pen in hand, like a therapist with my legs crossed, like, you know, the big cheese, like, you know, first of all, people aren't going to be authentic and honest and genuine because I'm there and they're going to put on a show to the other employees, try to impressing me. And quite honestly, I don't have a lot I can add anyway, because I'm not the mechanic changing the tires or the oil and rotating the tires. So what good am I going to do sitting in a mechanic meeting? You know, I own the car lot, I'm selling the cars, but I sure in hell don't know how they run. So I don't want to sit in there and hear all the stuff on the day-to-day mechanics. I did that stuff. And I don't know of an owner of an office that would want to sit in those meetings. You know, I'm not wired that way. I want to be thinking of how I can get out there and how many radio shows we can do, how we can get on TV, how I can buy a book of business, how I can, you know, project the image to the market we're trying to sell to in the best way possible. Why would I care what our postage looks like or how much a stamp is, or if we switch to a different type of labeling thing, we can say that's where the other people can make, the important people can make those very important decisions. But again, it didn't get there overnight, John. I did have to make those decisions early on, but I kept adding. And I listened to Ron Carson one time, geez, a long time ago, because I think Ron's another one that's on the Mount Rushmore. And he was saying something like, you have to have 300,000 of GDC to hire a staff person. So every 300,000 increment, that's a red flag. And I kind of use that as a guide. So, you know, we hit like 200, I hired somebody. We hit 400, I hired somebody. We hit 600. So I know there's only 200,000 increments, but to me, I felt like I wanted to be a little bit quicker in hiring. I'd rather be early to the game hiring than be late. I don't want to be bursting at the seams, putting out fires, you know, a forest fire with a bunch of thimbles because I'm understaffed. I'd rather be overstaffed and then just try to find creative ways for these people that have the extra time to go do things to build, you know, more efficiencies for the company. But Ron Carson said that as a guide. And I thought, you know what, I like that. We'll add. So my first staff person, I was negative immediately when I hired him, but then later on, I started adding a little bit more selectively. The most we ever had as employees at one time was 9. And I don't have any remote offices. All of our people are together under one roof. I have one individual with one staff person that is a branch office. Other than that, everybody's in our firm under the same roof. And I kind of like that family culture there. I would suck at being an OSJ with 50 branches and hundreds of agents all over, reps all over I just, for Jeff Johnston, that just wasn't interesting. I wasn't excited about that. I like interaction like this, talking to people and walking down the hall. And I'm 55. I'm old school. I know the newer, younger advisors, they probably would prefer to be on their computer all day, you know, and that's fine. That's how things have shifted. And that's probably.
And it has to make you feel good to trust in those employees, trust in those advisors, watch them grow, and then watch them succeed. And, you know, being able to take a step back and kind of almost, you know, take that in as you see them blossom and start to succeed.
There's nothing better than sitting down on a Monday and writing handwritten notes to staff or kicking out emails, just random, not the result of some big client you got or some project they helped do, but just a random email out of the blue. Hey, just want to tell you, you're doing a great job. Thanks for what you do to help us, you know, be the best that we can, you know, have a great weekend. That's a good feeling, you know. And one thing that's kind of interesting too, that I always told the staff at the staff meetings is I certainly want to be privy to the worst things that are going on. So not, i.e. the bad news. But if it gets to me, it's probably because you guys can't do it. So I would prefer these things don't get to me. In other words, you make the decisions. If you don't have to come to me to get permission to make a mistake. Just make the mistake. Just don't make it again. Don't make it again. Don't make it again. But you don't need to text me and say, hey, is it okay if we buy a camera to do a podcast on, you just make those decisions, make them right. And you don't have to bounce things off me all the time. The more people we add to the decision-making process, first of all, the more different opinions we're going to get. And it's harder to make decisions. And I think that's one of the problems with larger firms that have inter-office meetings once a week with 8, 9, 10 people. Are you kidding me? We had Monday morning meetings for a long time. And finally, Brock and I looked at each other and said, this is just a bitch complaining session. Everyone's bringing in their issues. I don't want to be there. You guys can still do this, but I'm out of the meetings. I'll get the summary version of the 4 things that are troubling everybody, but I don't need to be in an hour meeting, listen to people complain about things that I don't really have any desire to hear. Now, are they important? Yeah, but not for my ears.
Well, we're going to switch over and see if we can get some interaction from the group here. And I just wanted to tell you, Jeff, you know this. I mean, thank you for how much you've meant to me personally, how much you've meant to this cause, how much you meant to this industry, inspiring, being open, being vulnerable, sharing your story. You've made a difference. Like I tell you all the time, right? I mean, if nothing else, you've made a massive difference in my life. I know you've made a difference in the lives of others as well. Can't thank you enough for being part of this, for sharing your insight today. To the GAF pod, we're looking forward to continuing the conversation throughout the week. And Jeff, we'll look forward to continuing to collaborate with you going forward as well.
I enjoy the relationship, and I've been there watching you from the beginning, and I'm not going anywhere. So I'm excited to support you in what you're doing.